Minister of Interior, Habib al-Adli, for killing of the protesters. What about the funds that were earmarked for the presidential palaces? Now, these are basically cases and charges of corruption. Do you think that there could be some sort of tangible evidence in such a charge? Do you think that maybe the former regime could get away, or maybe get a less sentence than the one previously regarding the death and the killing of the protesters? However, the corruption cases, maybe some evidence would be strong enough and tangible enough to put them behind bars?
I guess maybe yes, for the corruption you may find some tangible evidence, but again it will be very small parts of the real corruption that has been going in the society. The corruption has been institutionalized in Egypt. You find corruption everywhere. It's not corruption in each institution. No, the corruption has become
structure,
the structure and the institution for the Egyptian society. So again, you know, I find myself laughing actually when I find that we are just trying Mubarak and his sons for having some funds for the presidential palaces or so, while they have been actually getting funds from all over the world and I don't know, destroying the population of Egypt and destroying all our resources. I don't think just having some money or some corruption in the presidential palaces is really the problem. When you look at anything that happened during the past 3 decades, you will find a lot of corruption cases that you can file and you can talk about, and you can actually try him if you want to. It's just if there is really a will, political will, that we should try the old regime, or even you can just walk away and say that we don't want to do anything of that. We just got rid of them, but we need to look at the future, as Dr. Bayoumi said. But we are not doing either.
Yes.
This is the problem.
Yes.
We are not trying any of the symbols of the old regime, of the real cases, and at the same time we are not looking forward to the future or even moving towards doing real progressive things to move forward.
Yes. Dr. Bayoumi, you've mentioned something earlier. You've talked about the problems and the corruption that took place during the Morsi era, during the Mubarak regime, and even previous regimes. And now the country is looking forward, looking to have a leader with a vision. And you talked about the problem of having a rarity of candidates and people who are not, you can't really mention names on the top of your head for people to run for the presidency. Do you think that this is something that's taking place nowadays because there's not enough people who are qualified enough to run the country? Or do you think that the possibility or the probability that Field Marshal Abdel Fattah al-Sisi is going to run is really affecting anybody else, any presidential hopefuls or any diplomats or politicians to step forwards and say, well, I want to run for the presidency?
Allow me to make previous comments. The regime that has been removed, the regime has not been removed. What are we talking about? The regime
Just
is
the
an
heads.
institution. If you are speaking about the head of the institution, yes. But the regime is alive and well. It's healthy. What is this? I mean, we wrote a paper 2 years ago. The objective of some powers, foreign powers, and also Arab regional power, is not to remove the regime, to uproot the regime, but to remake the regime, to reinvent the regime. I mean, let's look about the ministers who are in Biblawis. I mean, they are, I mean, some of the people who write in Ahram every day, they are part of the old regime. What's Mustafa Al-Fay? What's Abminam Saeed? What are all these people? What's Biblawi? I mean, let's not kid ourselves. I'm a scientist. Let's call things as they are. The head of the regime has been removed. There is an intifada. I don't call it a revolution because it did not achieve its goals, because it's not organized, and that's why it was very relatively easy to manipulate by local forces, Muslim Brotherhood and others, by regional forces, the Khaligis and so on, and by foreign forces. Let's not forget the United States and EU, and NATO and Israel, you know. So let's say there is something fantastic happened in our society. The people suddenly have awoken, but they are not organized yet. And they are not aware of the issues as they should. But the accumulation of oppression and underdevelopment and all these issues, I'm not going to repeat, and the lack of national sovereignty, by the way, led the people to suddenly explode at a moment. And it's not really interesting or important. It is interesting, but it's not important in this debate to say now what sparked it or not. It happened. And again, when they saw that they were deceived by the Muslim Brotherhood who raised the banner of Islam, which is very attractive to the common person, that these people are taking, not because what they achieved or what they didn't achieve, because they are taking the society on a path that not all, but most of the people reject. So again, on the 30th of June, they revolted. So let's be careful. In order to get rid of the old regime, it will take some time. Now, the situation, like I said, and by the way, the lack of leaders is at all levels. Ask me a name to suggest to be the president of Alexandria University. I will be at loss. Ask me to say what youth, leaders in youth. I will be at loss because it's natural after 40 years of these developments. So we are not on a period, we are starting from zero, we are starting from a negative situation. Now, I don't know.
What about the presidential hopefuls? Are you optimistic enough to see the next sort of leader or could steer the country in the right direction?
I will tell you very clearly. The big problem in Egypt now is what's called the intellectuals, النخبة. They are the problem. First of all, they are not Nukhba. Second, they are not intellectuals that they read. They don't read. Many of them don't read. Many of those مثقفين are not مثقفين. I challenge some of those leaders who appear on television who read a book in the past 10 years. They meet, they talk with each other, they watch these programs that people are tired of, maybe even including our discussion here, yap, all the time. They're tired of it. They want tangible things and they want frankness. No, if you look at the field, the only one who is a viable candidate, regardless of my views about the military versus civil rule, is Sisi. Why? Tell you. Sisi, at least he has proven that he is a manager. He managed a big institution called the army. Second, he came at a certain moment and saved the society from the path that the Muslim Brotherhood and their colleagues, Qatar and so on, and the American administration. Till now, and I'm well read about what the American institution write. Till now, the American administration pulled the rug from Morsi because he failed. But they didn't pull the rug from the Muslim Brotherhood. They insist that the Muslim Brotherhood continue as a viable political force. Why? Why? Read some studies. You know why? Because they consider the Muslim Brotherhood as a tool, and now I am quoting, a tool as a contraceptive of radical nationalism.
Yes.
The Muslim Brotherhood or the affiliates of Muslim Brotherhood, not only in Egypt, everywhere in the Arab world, as a tool to abort any rise of, they call it radical nationalism. Now, I'm not going to continue, but if you ask me a question, what makes the Muslim Brotherhood a viable tool, I will answer it. But that's what the administration wants. Now, Sisi, I believe in the military separate from the civilian rule. But let me tell you, Eisenhower was a general. He was the head of the Allied forces in the Europe, right?
Yes.
And now he removed his,
Yes.
and he became a president elected by a big margin, not repeated till now,
Yes,
and for twice time. And I tell you, some civilian rule who became fascists in Latin America. If you want to give you an example, I would be happy to do so. So this is not the issue. We are in a transition period. The main issue is to protect not the society, but al-ummah, al-dawla, al-dawla, the nation.
Yes.
Because there are many forces which are trying to dissipate it. And the army is also a target to weaken it, and so on. Look what happened in Iraq, what's happening in Syria, what happened in Libya.
Yes.
Why Egypt should be an exception.
Yes. Well, unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, that's all the time we have for this daily debate. Well, definitely a lot of developments are taking place, whether it's regarding the trials of former presidents Hosni Mubarak and Mohamed Morsi. Also, we'll be talking definitely about the upcoming presidential elections and the presidential hopefuls that we'll be seeing over the next few weeks. But before we go, I'd like to thank our very distinguished guest, Dr. Ashraf Bayoumi, the academic and political analyst. I would also like to thank Dr. Maha Abdel Nasser, the Secretary General of the Social Democratic Party. Thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, please stay tuned for more coming up on Nile International. I'm Hani Saif. Thank you for joining us.